Right now on Upfront.
Countdown to debate night.
I'm prepared to defend my record.
We are heavily preparing for the debate.
72 hours out, the first and only Wisconsin Supreme Court debate ahead of the April 1st election. In prime time, right here. The stakes couldn't be higher.
There's so many outside donors funneling money into this race.
I think it's a crime.
Control of the court in the balance.
Supreme Court representative has to have hot takes. Yeah.
The candidates here Wednesday night, but first, what's at stake? This Sunday, former Republican Governor Scott Walker, Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan, both here to preview it all.
Then the new poll.
There is a lot of public pressure to be clear about something.
What Wisconsin voters want to hear, their opinions of the candidates and the court itself less than a month until Election Day.
And the national impact.
Is this going to be a litmus test, this race, on the first 100 days of the Trump administration?
The millions in spending, the impact of President Trump. ABC News Washington Bureau Chief Rick Klein as the nation watches along.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Debate night in Wisconsin now just 72 hours out. The first and only time the two candidates for Wisconsin Supreme Court will meet face to face right here statewide. The 7 p.m. primetime debate hosted at Marquette Law School. Jaron and myself moderating between Susan Crawford and Brad Schimmel.
Control of the state's high court is at stake. An open seat with liberal Justice Ann Walsh Bradley retiring. Crawford, the liberal candidate backed by Democrats. Schimmel, the conservative and former Republican attorney general. Both this weekend in the final hours of debate prep.
How are you preparing for the debate, and what is you hope to get across in that moment with Brad Schimmel?
I hope that we get across sort of our core message about why I'm running and, my commitment to being a fair, impartial justice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And, preparation-wise, I feel like I am prepared to engage in the debate. I'm prepared to defend my record and make sure that voters understand the difference between the two candidates in this race.
We are heavily preparing for the debate, making sure that I'm in training. And like an athlete training for an upcoming event, you train harder than the event will be in the hopes that you're ready for anything. It's time to end a court going through a political agenda. Our constitutional republic as a state won't survive if we have one of the branches of government not following the rules it's supposed to follow. The legislature makes the law. The courts do not make the law.
There's no shortage of issues the court will face, from abortion to the power of the governor and the legislature to Act 10, the 2011 law signed by then-Governor Scott Walker that eliminated collective bargaining for most public workers.
Walker in Waukesha County Thursday night, headlining an event called The Case for Keeping Act 10, and with us immediately after. I want to start just broadly with the state Supreme Court race. In your mind, what is at stake April 1st?
Everything. I mean, because you've got such a stark contrast. You got one candidate who's about upholding the rule of law. You got another one who she and her supporters have all but said these things are going to happen. We really haven't had that historically in the past. So Act 10, voter ID, big things that are important to people all across the state are really at risk in this election.
I mean, we're talking about your agenda, right? When you say everything at stake?
Well, and particularly, and it's not because it's my legacy. I mean, I live here, I still have family here, but as a citizen, not as a former governor, it's not that I care about my legacy as much as the positive impact. If people want to change this, they want to alter it, run for governor, run for the legislature, make those changes. But the idea that something that's already settled law that the state Supreme Court has brought up, decided on, and made a decision to uphold, that federal courts have uphold. You've got all these years later, nothing changed in the law since it was upheld all those many times before. The only thing that's changed is the political makeup of the Supreme Court. And even with that change 2 years ago, Ann Walsh Bradley, who is aligned with the other three that make up supposedly the 4-3 liberal majority, she's still someone who's been on the bench a quarter century, who still believes in precedent. Why things are so critical in this race is if Susan Crawford's elected, you'll have 4 brazen political activists on the court that are likely to push liberal agenda items as opposed to just upholding and determining what the law is.
We saw in the poll that there's a lot of Wisconsin voters that still don't know a lot about either of these candidates. They're going to meet on the debate stage Wednesday night for the first and only time. What do you think Brad Schimmel needs to do?
I think he comes out swinging rhetorically, but I think he needs to make the point that, particularly on law and order, I mean, this is catch and release Crawford. This is someone who I think shouldn't even be on the circuit court bench in Dane County. She's that liberal, that out of touch. You've seen time and time again, even in Dane County, prosecutors arguing for stiff sentences for people who've raped children, who could have had 100 years in prison for going after children in sexual assault cases, and yet they're out of prison right now as we talk.
You were here talking about Act 10 tonight. Brad Schimel was Attorney General under you. Should he recuse himself if he's on the court and this case gets before him?
No, because he wasn't Attorney General when I was enacted Act 10. That was J.B. Van Hollen.
Yep.
So he came in 4 years later. But I think having been the Attorney General gives people a great understanding of his respect for the law, upholding the law, upholding the Constitution, understanding that governors and lawmakers make and sign the law, not members of the court.
On the money, we're seeing massive amounts again, like we did 2 years ago. As a conservative kind of looking in from the outside, are you glad that Elon Musk and his groups are getting involved in pumping millions in on the conservative side?
We need something to level the playing field, because 2 years ago, people thought it was a mandate. It wasn't a mandate, it was a blowout. It was a blowout because so much more, you're talking 5, 6, 7 times as much money was spent on behalf of the radical liberal candidate. You got a level playing field, or at least something close to that. Then I think the voters ultimately say, okay, do I want someone to uphold the law and uphold the Constitution? I want rule of law sustained, or do I want someone who's going to push a radical liberal agenda?
Big picture, when you look at all the money coming in from no matter what side you look at, is this good for the court? Is this good for the institution?
No, I mean, you think 2 years ago when we had that massive increase, the most recent member who won actually spent more than I did in my first race for governor. I think that's just out of control, but that's what happens when she's basically told people around the country, I'm your chance to block the Trump agenda.
How do you get Republicans out for this April 1st election who may have just been a Trump voter in recent history?
Well, I think that's a key, because the left is motivated because they hate Trump, so anybody who's going to stop him, they want to get behind. That's where all the money's coming in, and that's the targeted votes. In contrast, and I think some of these groups, certainly some of the focus I put on, have to go to every single person who voted for President Trump in this election, this last November, and say, if you want that agenda to continue, if they get rid of 2 House seats, that might stop the majority, and suddenly his agenda is dead on arrival.
Senator Bernie Sanders in Wisconsin this weekend, hosting events in districts Republicans narrowly won in 2024, and in part pushing voters to back Susan Crawford. Congressman Mark Pocan joining Sanders during a stop Friday night in Kenosha. With that, Congressman Pocan joins us now from Washington. Congressman, welcome back to Up Front.
Well, glad to be with you guys.
So I want to start with the state Supreme Court race. In your mind, what is at stake in this race?
Well, a lot. On one hand, we've got a partisan attorney general who, failed to process rape kits, who is running a very partisan campaign for a nonpartisan office. And on the other hand, you have a person who's a very well-respected, nonpartisan judge. I think there's a pretty clear distinction, and, no one's not understanding that there's a partisan bent to the court regardless. I would prefer to have, a court that is more independent than what we're seeing right now in Washington in many cases. With what's happening with Donald Trump, the last thing I want is to have more judges act like, bluntly, members of Congress. That's not a good thing.
Our debate with both candidates is just days away. What does Susan Crawford need to do Wednesday night?
Yeah, I think just, again, show what she is. She's a very, well-respected jurist. She's someone who has been a judge for quite a while, and talk about how she's going to be fair and impartial, and what general values I think that you bring to the court.
Congressman, in the new Marquette poll, a majority of voters said they want these candidates to discuss the issues. Do you think Susan Crawford needs to come out more forcefully on issues like abortion?
Well, and the problem is by law they can't, right? I mean, they're not supposed to do that going into the races. So, I think most people don't realize that the nonpartisan nature of the court, because of the way the partisan tilt of the campaigns are. But, by actual practice, they're really not supposed to address issues. And I just think that's where the disconnect is.
There's been a ton of talk about recusal and a number of potential cases that may come before the court. Do you think she would need to recuse herself from any cases when you look at her representing teachers who tried to overturn Act 10 or represented Planned Parenthood at one point?
Yeah, look, I'm not a lawyer, but I often think when people ask for recusal, It's not based on legal merits or standing. It's based on politics. And I think most of the recusal cries for anyone I've heard so far this year have really been based more on politics than policy.
As Democrats look forward, there are some dire numbers in the new Marquette poll. Broadly, some 62% in Wisconsin say they view the Democratic Party unfavorably. That includes nearly 20% of Democrats who have that unfavorable view. Is this a party in crisis at this moment?
I mean, coming out of November, we don't have a figurehead right now, right? There's not a president or a vice president. And given that, there's a bit of a vacuum, and that's kind of natural. That happens. So you've got a lot of senators, you've got governors, you've got some members of Congress, you've got other folks all trying to kind of fill that vacuum, but there's not a central voice. And, that just makes it a bit more difficult to get the message across.
Even ahead of the president's address, there was some debate among Democrats and leadership over how much to protest. You reportedly told the group that you were pretty upset using an expletive when you did so. What is actually going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I was discussing where my constituents are. And what keeps getting missed when people talk about who did what in the audience, you're not saying who said what from the podium. And what wasn't said is what's happening right now in Congress is the worst thing I've seen happen in over 12 years. It is a ripoff, a theft from the middle class and from those who need it the most to the wealthiest through a tax cut.
These unfavorable numbers for Democrats here in the state, how concerning should this be for Susan Crawford's campaign ahead of April 1st?
Yeah, I actually think the intensity, because again, if I'm getting record calls right now, I broke my one-day record, I broke my weekly record, right? We're getting a lot of people. That tells me there's an interest. People are following things and watching it. I think that's actually helpful. I think if more people are tired of what Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire, is doing while getting federal contracts, he's firing federal employees and causing all kinds of chaos. And now he's trying to fund the conservative candidate for the Supreme Court because he wants to buy a Supreme Court because Wisconsin might be suing him. Look, all of those things are reasons that I think people are going to get out and vote. And I don't think they're going to vote for the guy that's going to be in Elon Musk's pocket.
Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan. Congressman, like always, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
So our Wisconsin Supreme Court debate airs statewide Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on WISN 12 in Milwaukee, WBAY in Green Bay, and in Madison, Eau Claire, Wausau, and La Crosse, live on your station's .2 channel.
And the good news, beyond all of that, the debate is also streaming live in several locations. You can watch it from wherever you are on our WISN 12 News app and live both on our WISN 12 Facebook page and on YouTube.
Coming up, the new Wisconsin poll.
So there is a lot of public pressure to be clear about something. But how do you do that and not declare how you're going to vote on a specific case?
What voters are saying ahead of Wednesday's debate. Charles Franklin, director of the Marquette Law School poll, is standing by next.